When God brings in the new heaven and the new earth at the end of time, He'll send the new Jerusalem down to earth, where it says that it's going to be prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And so we're going to look at Revelation 21, starting at verse 9. And he says, "One of the seven angels who had the seven bowls full of the seven last plagues came and said to me, 'Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb.' And he carried me away in the Spirit to a mountain, great and high, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The angel who talked with me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates, and its walls. The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide. He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length, and as wide and high as it is long. He measured its wall, and it was 144 cubits thick by man's measurement, which the angel was using. The wall was made of jasper, and the city of pure gold, pure as glass. The foundations of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third chalcedony, the fourth emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the tenth chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. The 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. The great street of the city was of pure gold, like transparent glass. I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. On no day will its gates ever be shut, for there will be no night there. The glory and honor of the nations will be brought into it. Nothing impure will ever enter it, nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life." So as we read there, we see that, that the new Jerusalem coming down, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And as John attempts to describe the new Jerusalem, he reveals some things about this city. He reveals that, number one, the city will have the everlasting presence of God. When this city comes down out of heaven, it's going to have the everlasting presence of God in it. It's interesting looking at this city. In the Old Testament, Old Testament tabernacle and temple. We talked about this months ago. We have the temple, we have the outer courts, the inner courts, the holy place, and then the Holy of Holies. And the Holy of Holies was where God's presence was in the temple. And within the Holy of Holies was a room in the tabernacle, a room in the temple that was built in a cube. It was 15 feet wide, 15 feet deep, 15 feet high. So a little smaller than this room. 15 by 15 by 15. And the only thing in this room was the Ark of the Covenant. That box that had the manna and the staff that was inside of it, and the commandments that were in there, all those things, that was the only thing that was there in that room. And on that, the Ark of the Covenant, on top of it was the mercy seat, which is where God's presence was found in this room, in that place. And you think about, and I was surprised as I read this, that was the only item in the room. There was no lamp in that room. They would walk in to the Holy of Holies. The only thing there was the ark. The light that they had in that room was called the Shekinah glory of God. God's presence was there. His glory was so present there that it lit up the room. So that the priests, they could go in and they could fulfill their duties of sprinkling the blood of the sacrifices upon the mercy seat for the forgiveness of the sins of the people. It was a place where no human spoke, but only the voice of God was heard there. And that was the Old Testament picture, and that was just a pale image of what is to come. As you think of the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, it is the Holy of Holies enlarged. The Holy of Holies was 15 feet by 15 feet by 15 feet. The city of God that comes down, the New Jerusalem, is also built in a cube. It says 1,400, or however many stadia. How many stadia was it? 12,000 or something like that? 1,400 miles. It was 1,400 miles long, 1,400 miles deep, 1,400 miles high. A perfect cube. And on the back of your notes, I in my boredom this week, there was a map that's 1,400 miles square. That's going to be the size of the city, the New Jerusalem, that's going to come down out of heaven. 1,400 miles high. What is it? I wrote it down. I want to say space is, I don't have it in here. But it's like about 60 miles is where NASA says, no, it's 100 miles is like 60 miles of space. They say that they count it as a space flight, but I think 100 miles up is where it's actually space. 100 miles. The city of God is going to be 1,400 miles high. We can't picture. You go to, I'm going to pick on the big cities, Los Angeles. How big is Los Angeles? It's huge. You go to New York, it's huge. You go to Chicago, it's huge. It's nothing. The New Jerusalem that comes down is going to be massive. 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles. It's the expansion of the Holy of Holies from the tabernacle and temple. And this will be the eternal dwelling place of God. Did you notice as we read there? It's the dwelling place of God, but there's not going to be any light there. There's no lamp. Just like the Holy of Holies. Because what lights up the city? The glory of God. The glory of God is going to light up the city. And the Lamb is going to be its lamp. There is going to be no night. There is no sun to light the day. It's going to be God's glory and His glory alone that lights up the city. And it's going to be a time where there is no night, because He is there always and forever. And it's always going to be light because His presence is there. So you see the pale image of the Holy of Holies and the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat. It expands to the New Jerusalem, this massive city that's going to come out of heaven. And it's going to be the dwelling place of God. His presence is going to be there forever and ever. All nations will walk by His light, and His presence will shine for all of eternity. So His presence is going to be there. Everlasting presence of God. Number two is going to be the extravagant beauty of the church. the extravagant beauty of the church. This description of the New Jerusalem is filled with beauty. We see that the 12 gates around the city are made of a single pearl. And the 12 foundations will be decorated with 12 precious stones, and I couldn't really pronounce all those stones. And there's different names that we use now. I think it's jasper, sapphire. Is it agate? Agate? Agate. That's what I said. Agate. Agate, emerald, onyx, ruby, chrysolite, beryl, topaz, turquoise, jacinth, and amethyst. It's just going to be a beautiful city, a brilliant city when it comes down. The wall which will be 200 feet thick, and I was trying to figure that out in my head. That's 2/3 of a football field, Mike. That's the width of the wall. And the wall is going to be made of jasper. And the city and all of its streets will be made of gold, as pure as transparent glass. It's a beautiful city, but these images are not just pictures of beauty. It's not just pictures of precious stones. It's a picture of the church of Jesus Christ. The 12 gates, whose names were on the 12 gates? There's the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, it is only through the 12 tribes of Israel that the Messiah came. You have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob became Israel, had 12 sons. From those 12 sons came the Messiah. So they are the only ones through which we can get into the city. It's because of them that the Messiah came, and now we have access to the city. The 12 foundations of the city represent the 12 apostles, upon which the church of Jesus Christ is going to be built. And then it talks about the precious stones that are going to adorn the foundations and the walls of the city that represent the people of God. We are going to be those stones that adorn the foundations upon which the church is built. We've talked about this before, and I think it's so important for us, and I lean on this a lot, and I think it's important for us to really grapple with and understand. You know, Peter wrote that the followers of Jesus are precious stones who are joined together to form the house of God. When he wrote that, he did not have this image of the city of God coming down. But it's a picture of the church. We are those precious stones who are being formed into the house of God. Because you look at precious stones. How are precious stones formed? How are pearls formed? Through pressure, through heat, through friction. So as we join together as the people of God, as we join together in the heat and the pressure and the friction that comes with relationships. Did you know there's pressure in relationships? Mm-hmm. Friction in relationships? Do you know what that pressure and friction is doing? It's making us into precious stones. The trials that we go through, the struggles that we go through, are making us beautiful in the eyes of God. And as we have that pressure upon us and the struggles and the friction of the I believe this and I believe this, and you're fighting through that and you're working through that, He's creating in us the precious stones, the precious materials that are going to join together to form His church. And we are making the dwelling place of God. And that dwelling place is going to be beautiful. Beyond beauty. And that beauty is going to be the church of Jesus Christ. So not only is this city coming down out of heaven, an enlarged version of the Holy of Holies, but all the precious stones that are making up this city is us. We are the precious stones that will make up the city of God in which He dwells. He will dwell in us forever and ever. So the extravagant beauty of the church. And then number 3, the endless glorification of God. It tells us in this passage that the gates into the New Jerusalem will never be shut because it's always going to be light. It's always going to be day. And so there can be activity going in and out of the city. And it says nothing impure will ever enter in the kingdom. And the kings of the earth will bring their splendor. And the glory and the honor of the nations will be brought into it. And this splendor, glory, and honor will be given to God for all of eternity. He will be constantly glorified for who He is and what He has done. And if we bring it back down to us, the followers of Jesus Christ, this will be a time where we, as followers of Christ, will honor Jesus Himself by returning the gifts and the crowns that we have received from Him, giving it back to Jesus. And then Jesus is going to turn and give all those gifts and crowns, and He's going to turn to the Father and give it back to the Father. And everything will be complete. Because that glorification of God will continue on forever and ever and ever. We will pour our love into the Lord, and the Lord will pour His love into the Father, and the Father will pour His love into us, and it will be that constant glorification that will take place for all eternity. The glory and honor and splendor will be given to Him. We will glorify the Father and the Son, and the love of the Godhead will be present forever. But there is only one thing, one stipulation that He gives us. And we've read about this before, but it's also in this passage. One stipulation to be part of this kingdom. At the bottom of your notes. It says, only those whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life will be able to be part of its structure. Only those whose names have been written in the Book of Life will be able to be part of its structure, to be those precious stones that are joining together to make the house of God in which He lives. To be part of its structure and to experience this new city in all of its glory. Only those whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life will be able to be part of its structure and to experience this new city in all of its glory. Those whose names are not in the Book of Life are going to be sent away. So that leaves us with that question of, have we accepted the only way to be able to be part of that city? And it's a question we need to be asking others too. Have you received Jesus Christ as your Savior? That is the only way that we will be able to experience the city of God coming down. To be the precious stones that make up this city. To be a place where we glorify God forever and ever. I want to be there. I'm sure you want to be there. And I'm sure you want your friends and neighbors to be there. Maybe some of your neighbors you don't want, but we need to be praying that God changes our hearts for those people. And that we share the coming kingdom, the city of Jerusalem, the city of God, for all eternity. Will you pray with me? Father, I thank you that you have given us your word, and you have given us that picture of what's going to take place at the end of time. I thank you. I'm always amazed, Lord, at even what you put into place in the Old Testament refers to what you're planning to do in the coming kingdom. That fact that little room where your presence was at is going to be an enlarged city where your presence will be forever and ever. And those of us who call on the name of the Lord that are saved will be able to be part of that city. To experience the beauty. To experience your presence. To to experience the glorification of who you are and all that you do. And I just pray that you will help us to make our hearts right with you, and that you will help us to have a heart for other people. That this city is not for everyone, it's only for those whose names are written in the book of life. And so I just pray that you will break our hearts for others to be able and have that courage to share the good news of Jesus Christ. To be able to say Jesus is Lord, and to believe in our hearts that you raised him from the dead, that we will be saved, and we will become part of the precious stones that form the city of God. And so, Father, I pray that you will help us to grow in you. You will give us that heart for other people, and that you will give us success. Knowing that it's not what I do or what I say, but you are doing the work through us. And so, Father, we pray that you will use us in a spectacular way to bring people closer to you, knowing that you are drawing them to yourself and using us to point them to you. So, Father, give us success as we live for you. Give us success as we reach out to others. Looking forward to the day when the new Jerusalem comes down out of heaven and we get to rejoice in you forever and ever. Father, we love you. In Christ's name we pray.